Humanity had a slow, long start when it came to conquering the stars. They had already stepped foot on their moon before they had decent computing, rocketry, or even fusion energy. It was more of a crazy gambit, fueled more by violence and friction with one another that was more prevalent in them in those early days. So they started early and then steadily progressed, visiting the heavenly bodies in their system one by one, setting up colonies, then reaching out to the nearby star systems, first in incredibly slow ships that they called generation ships. No FTL tech, no cryo-sleep tech, just people living, generations wasted in the confines of a ship, only so that their grandchildren could live on a new planet. A planet that they even did not know would be livable. Their slow, long drawn-out progress of colonizing the immediate galactic vicinity also gave them time. Time to unify under a single form of government. Time to fix their shortcomings, of which they had many. Time to think about how they wanted to expand into the stars. A lot of their media painted violent pictures. Humanity, they decided, would not be like that. They would be just, peaceful, friendly. Even though their progress was slow, it was inevitable for humanity to meet other forms of intelligent life. This galaxy was filled with it. And so, after spending a few decades exploring and colonizing their lonely corner, they finally met one of the other species of our galactic community.
Elder Gen, was it us? Did the humans meet us first?
One of the children suddenly spoke out loud. They were quickly hushed by the others, who wanted Jen to continue. Jen chuckled and eased them.
It is okay, calm down. No, we were not the first species they found. It was the Galagan that got to enjoy that honor.
Jen smiled, calmly waiting if another of the children had a question.
Please.
One of the children said.
Continue with the story, Truth Speaker.
The others nodded in agreement.
Good, settle down, and let me continue then.
Jen smiled at the children. Then he put all four of his hands back on the emitter. The orb changed color, from dark purple to light mauve, a sign that the children would now be able to receive the tale he was weaving, projected directly into their minds in the form of complex memories that had sound and images and sensory input even at times. Humanity had spent a lot of time imagining what alien life could look like, and they found the Galagan remarkably normal, as they later would say. Not in a bad way, it was just a very similar life form to their own. Most of us are, but humanity would have known that. The Galagan are bipedal, hairless, with a somewhat longer projected nose. There were, of course, many other differences, but these were small aesthetical things. In the bigger scheme of things, the Galagan were remarkably similar and easy to communicate with. Humanity always had remarkable people of science, very thorough, driven, and specialized, and they had many of these people, a stark difference with how most of the rest of the galactic community operated, where the people of science were few and almost always polymaths. None of our ships would have one of them on it, and yet humanity has the habit of sending ships to unexplored parts of space equipped with whole teams of their so-called scientists. The vessel that met the Galagayan had not one, but 3 linguists, people of science, whom study language almost exclusively. In a matter of days, they could communicate through single words of meaning. In a matter of weeks, they had a common language. After months, they had humans able to speak Galagaanian Common. This was an unprecedented feat of science, and it shocked the Galagaanian community and the galactic community after that. But news, especially back then, flowed slowly. By the time that the capital worlds heard of it, humans had already met many more of us. Now, this part is not commonly known, but the Galagayan that the humans met were not high caste. They were not so-called core worlders. They came from a nearby Galaganian colony planet, one that had met its quota, and was now deemed too costly to run and left to fend for itself. The colony could sustain itself when it came to food and water, but all other amenities were difficult to come by. So the colony sent out their only spaceship to look for nearby resources in hopes of attracting trade once more. And that is when they met humanity. And while this was quite common back then, and still is today, the Galagaeans seemingly had a lot of difficulty explaining how the galactic community worked to the humans. Once they understood, it is said that they responded by saying, "What kind of ultra-space capitalism bullshit is this?" The hard-working humans sucked every bit of information out of the Galagaean that they could, giving them things in trade from their world. Mostly food, and only after making sure it was safe to eat for the Galagaean. Something they were able to do through science instead of selecting one volunteer, which is precisely what the Galagaean had been intent on doing. The Galagaean gained another honor that day, the honor of being the first species to taste chocolate. Jen could hear some children gasp and giggle. Chocolate was a much-liked amenity throughout the Solarian Empire. Then he continued. The industrious humans analyzed all the information they got, and quickly came with a theory about the galactic community. A theory that was very much a representation of the truth. There are two types of civilizations in your community, they said, and we like neither type. Either they are extreme isolationists and contain themselves to a single star, or 3 at the most, accepting only the most basic of communication, with borders tightly closed off, mostly out of strange cultural or religious reasons. With this, we can agree we don't like it, but they are not inherently doing anything bad. The other option is some sort of feudal, like star empire. A wealthy core world, most often the home planet. Not always are these empires limited to only one core world. These core worlds are filled with opulence, decadence, and wealth beyond imagination. But it is all fueled by scores of colony worlds, hardly managed or supported, milked dry for their resources. We see a pattern in your stories, that these empires have rich patrons that set up a colonization effort. They payroll it all, and many of the less fortunate sign up for a better life. During its infancy, the colony is still supported by the patron, and then once it starts turning a profit, whatever the patron invested is paid back double, in some cases even triple. But then, after the colony is considered as paid off, the patrons abandon them. The colonies are left to fend for themselves, sometimes not even able to be self-sustaining. Most of these colony worlds are poor, on the brink of starvation or extinction. Their only hope to hold out until a core world trade ship passes by that is willing and able to sell whatever parts they direly need to save themselves and will charge them up ridiculous amounts, keeping their colonies poor and the core world fat. It is disgusting. This was their analysis back then, and not much has changed about it, nor their opinion. The Galagon had been amazed by the conclusion of the humans, and hearing it all laid out like that, they agreed that it was disgusting. Unfair. The first things the humans did after the contact phase was over surprised the Galagaean even more. They asked them what they needed for their colony. Hesitant, the Galagaean told them, and the humans surprised them again by saying that they would provide it. The Galagaean asked them at what cost, knowing that they had been unable to pay the last 2 core world traders that had passed by their colony, and the humans asked for nothing in return, just to be friends, since they were neighbors. Over the span of a decade, humanity kept helping the Galaganian colony, making sure they could survive and increasing their quality of life. At the same time, they gained a lot of insight into the galactic community, how it worked, where it excelled in, and where it failed at. They also gained a lot of insights from the technology the Galaganians used. The colony had no polymaths, but the humans had plenty of scientists, and they traded remarkably well for the most mundane gadgets. Over time, humanity was able to produce and manufacture the technological needs of the Galaganians as well. On the 10-year anniversary of their first contact, the humans asked the Galaganians a remarkable question. "Do you want to join us?" They had made sure there were no real ties between the colony and the core worlds. The empires did not see the colonies as their property or land or even domain. They were independent. It was easier that way, no burden to help them or defend them or rescue them. But it also meant the colonies could do whatever they wanted. There did exist some loose colony federations. They just never amounted to much because all the colonies were poor, and without polymaths, they could hardly build an industry large enough to crawl out of their poverty. But humanity changed that. They also did not ask for servitude, vassalage, or to become a tributary either. They asked them to become part of the Solarian Empire, to become citizens and enjoy the same benefits, duties, and rights as all of humanity. They had been secretly at work for the last few years of rewriting their whole legal system and their universal rights so that they accommodated perfectly the Galagaean or the other species that they knew about via the Galagaean. It did not take long for the Galaganian colony to decide. The vote was unanimous. Yes, yes, they would. And so humanity conquered their first colony through the only means they would consider conquering, through peace and kindness.
Now, that is enough for today, children. I have matters to attend to, so you all go ahead and go home.
There was some puffing and huffing. Jen took it as a compliment. That meant that the kids enjoyed his storytelling, but he was stern and sent them all on their way. He did have matters to attend to, after all. His longtime friend was passing through the system and had some time in their schedule to meet. Jen walked merrily as he whistled a tune, while heading for the bar where he would meet with Arifa. It had been years since he had seen them. Arifa was a human diplomat, one Jen had worked with closely when his colony had been in the process of joining the Solarian Empire. He looked back fondly on those memories. Humanity really saved them all from death back then. He wondered what they wanted to talk about. It had been a while, but their message had sounded somewhat urgent.